to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about the standout performance by Isaiah Simmons last night at the Combine that will probably see him rise up draft charts. In addition to that, I'm also going to talk about a quote that came off the mouth of Ralph Vacchiano regarding the type of defensive player that the New York Giants are said to be looking for in this year's draft or potentially free agency. And I'll talk about whether or not Isaiah Simmons may or may not fit that description. I'll also have a live call-in show tonight around 8:30 to talk about everything. The whole recap of the Combine and everything else. Also, probably going to have a couple more videos up for you guys, so be on the lookout for that. But I wanted to get this video up as soon as I could. Yesterday I was at work, but I came home, watched the Combine performance, and it was incredibly impressive. And I keep saying it, the most impressive attribute about Isaiah Simmons is his versatility, his ability to cover, his ability to play multiple positions. And all we've heard from Joe Judge this entire offseason since he's been here, and from Patrick Graham, when you go back and look at his history, is they want players that could do a number of things, and they want to be able to put those players in the best position to succeed. There's no better player on the defensive side of the football that fits that, which is why I think New York Giants view this guy as the best potential match if we go defense. Of course, offensive tackle is vitally important for the New York Giants, and I have made the argument as to why I think it may be more important to go that way. But when you watch Isaiah Simmons yesterday, I could certainly understand if the New York Giants decide to go defense, if they go with Simmons. Of course, he was so impressive that he may rise up draft charts and he may not even get to the New York Giants. I still hold firm and think that Chase Young will go to the Redskins. We'll have to wait and see. But at number 3, the Lions could be so impressed with this guy that they take him and they let Okudah potentially fall to the Giants, and then the Giants would be left with a decision whether or not to go cornerback or, potentially trade down and try to get an offensive tackle or just take an offensive tackle at number 4. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. A lot of them will start to be answered after free agency, but we will not know until after the draft. But Simmons is certainly a guy that is very popular with Giants fans, and he'd be a home run for a lot of Giants fans if they were to take him. After all, we need a guy that could cover, and his Combine stats, and we're going to get into them, we're going to talk about them from an historical context, were so impressive. They were beyond impressive. You think about Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram is a similar size to that of Isaiah Simmons, but he's a tight end, obviously. And Isaiah Simmons 40 times surpassed Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram is thought to be probably the most athletic tight end in the league. He has wide receiver type speed, but he's built like a tight end. And Isaiah Simmons was able, to exceed that, and he's built a similar way to that of Evan Ingram. And that is the attraction with Isaiah Simmons if we do draft him, his ability to take away players like Evan Ingram, tight ends that cause mismatches. George Kittle, he was quoted as saying that, Isaiah Simmons at the Combine, when he was asked about the value that he plays, would bring to a football team. He said, I play defense. And then he talked about how he could take away the league's best tight ends. He'd also be able to take away the best running backs coming out of the backfield. So that is his value. There's no doubt about it. Another very impressive stat I read about him was on his 7 sacks, he only rushed the quarterback 71 times last year for Clemson, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Now, a lot of those came on design blitzes, things like that. But regardless, Simmons is a big-time impact player and could definitely add some punch to the New York Giants defense. And the Giants, we all know, need playmakers. They also need linebackers. We'll have to wait and see if they address that in free agency before the draft. But, of course, they cut the veteran Alec Ogletree, Kareem Martin. Not that he did much, but they definitely need a linebacker, and Isaiah Simmons would fit the bill. A lot of people point to that he's undersized, and they don't know if he could play it, and that's a fair point. Someone in my community notes talked about how he didn't do the bench press yesterday, and they said they wish he would have done that, being that you got to be able to shed guys that are 300 pounds, and it's a great point. But like I said, I don't think his biggest strength is being a downhill linebacker. I think he's like Corey Littleton, a guy that's going to drop back in coverage, take away that tight end, that slot wide receiver. I think that will be his strongest attribute in the NFL. I think he's also a type of guy that you kind of have to game plan your offense around because he could do a variety of things. You never know where he's coming from. But let's jump into the Combine. Let's talk about how he did from an historical context, comparing him to 40 times of other players. Let's jump right into it. So there's Isaiah Simmons running his big-time 40 time of 4.39 at 238 pounds at 6'4", beyond impressive. This is how he ranked in terms of percentile, in terms of height, vertical jump, broad jump, and the 40 time. At 6'4", he ranked in the 93rd percentile. I think this is of players that have participated in the Combine. The 39-inch vertical leap leap ranked him in the 92nd percentile. The 11-foot broad jump ranked him in the 98th percentile. And the 4.39 40 time ranked him in the 99th percentile. When you weigh 238 pounds and you play linebacker, you should not be ranking in the 99th percentile in 40 times. Those are the types of 40 times that go to 190-pound receivers, 200-pound running backs. Beyond impressive. It was even potentially more impressive than the combine of Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley's was ridiculous. And Saquon Barkley, you could certainly make the argument when the Giants drafted him at number 2 overall, it was not the team's biggest need. You could make an argument for sure that offensive line was a bigger need, quarterback was a bigger need. There was a number of needs, running back being one of them. Well, linebacker's one of them. It's not our biggest need, but Dave Gettleman has shown in the past when there is a player he feels like he can't pass up, he's going to take them, and he stood out at the combine just like Saquon Barkley did. Now we haven't heard the Giants talk a lot about Simmons. We'll have to wait and see how Joe Judge and Gettleman feel about him, being that they're working collaboratively. But if he's there at 4, which he may not be at this point, he certainly could be on the Giants' radar. You obviously also have the possibility of being able to trade down to 5 or 6 and grabbing him, being that, if the Chargers are moving up, they're probably moving up to get a quarterback, and the same could be said for the Dolphins. If you move back any further at this point, I would say Isaiah Simmons is probably off the draft boards. But we won't know, like I said, until draft night. The next thing I wanted to pull up was a really interesting tweet by NFL Research, breaking down his combine and relating it to other players at other positions and really just showing you how impressive this combine really was. I remember they did this for Barkley 2 years ago, and they compared his bench reps to Joe Thomas. They compared his vertical, I believe, to Julio Jones and a number of other great players, and he surpassed all of them. Well, Isaiah Simmons did the same thing last night. He was taller than DK Metcalf, heavier than Roquan Smith, faster than Devin Hester. He jumped higher than Julio Jones, and he was more explosive than Alvin Kamara. And guys like Alvin Kamara are the types of players that you are going to want Isaiah Simmons to take away. That's going to be his biggest strength. And then they broke it down by numbers. Staying at 6'3" and 5/8 inches, he was taller than Metcalf at 6'3" and 3/8. 238 pounds, he was 2 pounds heavier than Roquan Smith. His 4.39 40 time was faster than Hester's 4.43. And Hester is one of the most explosive players in the history of the game. He's probably the best kick returner who's ever lived. He's probably, if he goes to Hall of Fame, that'll be the reason. His 39-inch vertical jump was, exceeded Julio Jones' 38.5. Julio Jones, of course, one of the best wide receivers in the game. And his 11-foot broad jump was more explosive than Alvin Kamara's 10-foot 11 inches. And like I said, Alvin Kamara, one of the more explosive running backs. You could probably argue the second or third best pass-catching running back in the league. Those are the types of players outside of the tight end position that you're going to ask him to take away. I also wanted to pull up this quote that came out today from Ralph Vacchiano, one of the guys that I trust the most. I always say that, regarding what he has heard about the New York Giants and the type of defensive player they are looking for. Now, he did not specify that it would be in the draft. One team source said the Giants are definitely looking for that Michael Strahan type player who can change the approach of an opposing defense all by himself. But unless Young falls to them at 4, they're skeptical that such a player exists in this year's draft. They'd have to take a shot at a second-tier player on the second day like Wisconsin's Zach Bond, Notre Dame's Julian Okwara, or Penn State's Gross Matos. And they'll be in the same bind when it comes to free agency. They'll likely take their shot at Jadeveon Clowney, but they are privately worried that any of the non-tag pass rushers will end up priced way above what the Giants are willing to pay. So there you have it. At least according to Vacchiano and what he is hearing, they are probably not going to break the bank for an edge rusher unless it's Clowney, I suppose. And they don't necessarily feel like there is a Michael Strahan type player at the top of the draft outside of Chase Young. However, part of that quote, he does talk about changing the approach. I do feel like Isaiah Simmons could be that type of guy because you have the game plan. You don't know how he's going to be utilized on any given Sunday. So he is certainly a very interesting chess piece and a very valuable chess piece that the New York Giants could potentially add. But in terms of a pass rusher, I mean, I tend to agree with him. I don't think there's a premier pass rusher in this draft outside of Chase Young. I know a lot of New York Giants fans are still hoping to get Chase Young. While I won't completely rule it out, I think it's very unlikely. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But in terms of an unpredictable standpoint, you could actually probably argue that it may be harder to game plan for a player like Isaiah Simmons than a player like Chase Young. You could double team Chase Young. You don't know, how the Giants would utilize a player like Isaiah Simmons, which is what makes him valuable and why the New York Giants are looking to have a versatile type defense. They're kind of like a chameleon. They could adjust to their opponent, but to be able to do that, they need the players that fit what they're looking to do, and Isaiah Simmons certainly would fit that. We'll have to wait and see what they do on draft night, but regardless, Isaiah Simmons certainly helped his draft stock last night. We'll have to wait and see just how much he potentially helped it and whether or not the New York Giants would be willing to take him at number 4 over what many people feel is a bigger need at the offensive tackle position. But as always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.